Okay, welcome to our video on open objects. In the last video, we discussed closed or regular objects, and now we are looking at open objects. These are objects that don't grab back around on themselves for the most part, and you'll see how that works as we go through each one of these. Now, we have these 5 shapes here, and if I come over here to the matching little slash right here and I hold over it, you can see that I have what is called a line segment tool. Um, and if I click and hold on the corner here, come on, okay, you can see the line segment tool. It uses the slash key for its keyboard shortcut. And underneath it, we have the arc tool, the spiral tool, the rectangular grid tool, and the polar grid tool. And again, just like with the closed objects, I have a little highlight right here. I can click that, and this will pop loose, and I can move it over here next to them, which I'm going to do so that I can zoom in on these a little bit, and we can look at them a little bit closer. So the closed objects have kind of a similar keyboard uses as the other ones did. Obviously, they're a little bit different because they are open objects, but we'll go through these and you can see what they are. Again, you can see my smart guides popping up to show alignment if I want to match a certain line when I start drawing. And like the closed shape ones, I click and hold and draw wherever I want to go. And until I let it go, it's just here letting me decide where I want it to be. Um, If I add the shift key, what does that do? It locks it flat. Though in this object in particular, I can pull down a bit and it will snap it to the 45 and snap it again to the 90. So it's vertical, horizontal, and 45-degree angle. So you have that option with it. Also, I can hold down the Alt Option key and it will go out from the center point instead. Oops, we let go of that one. Let's put a stroke on this for the next one. Excuse me. And I will draw another one here, and you can see that if I hold down the Alt Option key, it goes out from the center instead, like a little teeter-totter. And same thing, I can hold down the Shift key as well and get the 45 and the vertical with this. All right. The next tool below that is the Arc tool. And the Arc tool, same kind of thing. It draws, I click and hold. Oh, I guess I kind of skipped here. So what happens if I just click once? The dialog box comes up, right? I'll do this with the line tool. Click once, the line segment tool comes up. It's very short. It says length 1.85 inches and it gives an angle on it. So that's the same length as this one. I'll do it at a 49-degree angle. And I'll click this fill line thing and see what happens. Nothing happened in class when I did it. So I am suspicious that there is nothing there for it to do. I'm going to check really quickly here by adding an anchor point and moving it and making sure that it's not filled, but I mean I can see over here that it's not. So I'm not sure what the add fill line thing or the fill line was for. It is already filled when I draw it. So I think that sometimes when they update the program, things don't work and they don't bother to update them. If you notice things and you want to report them and say, hey, I don't think this works again, you can always go to the help menu and submit a bug feature request. Again, I'm not really having known what that was actually for. I would have to go and do some research to see if that's actually working or not working in some fashion, but I could go and do that if I wanted to. All right. The next, oops, see, I selected this with the direct selection tool and it didn't get the whole thing for deleting it. Okay, the next tool here is the arc tool. If I click and drag, it gives me an arc, and you can see that it actually tries to align with things. If I hold down the shift key, it makes a perfect arc, equal width and height on it. Um, the shift and the alt option key don't do anything with this one. The keys that do allow us to do something are the C key, C as in cat. That makes it a closed shape. If I click it again, it makes it an open shape. So C stands for closed, and it allows you to have a closed shape like that. And then when I go to draw it again, it's going to be closed again. And the other key that affects this is the F key. F is in Frank. And when I do that, it flips, or F is in flip, I guess I could say. It flips it back and forth like this. So I can flip it, and then I can open it, close it again, flip it again. So that's basically what goes on there. Also, you can add the up and down arrows to this, and it changes the angle of the arc, so it can make it flatter and more curved by using the up and down arrow keys. All right. Next, we have the spiral. Excuse me. Spiral has lots of little interesting things on it. Oh, I keep missing. So I go back to the arc tool. Again, if I click with the arc tool, I get the arc segment options. And you can see it's got a length and a height, and the type is closed. And the slope, which was what we were doing with the plus and minus. And there's the fill arc. So let's try that real quick. I'm going to say OK. I didn't fill anything. Nope, there's no fill. Fill is empty. So I'm not sure what that's for. But again, always have the little click options where you can type in exact measurements if you want them. Here we've got the I'm not blanking on the name, spiral tool. Yes, it's a spiral. And you can see it's the exact same spiral right there as the other one. You click and drag from the center point outward. It doesn't really reshape. What happens here is if I have the shift key on this one, it lets me rotate at a 45-degree angle. So again, you can kind of see it hopping. There's straight up and down. Oops, a little bit difficult to show you. Holding the shift key, so you get a point at the 45 and the straight up and down, 45, straight up and down. So it kind of jumps a little bit for you. The up and down arrow keys give you more or less segments here, so you can see I can pull it out or circle it in further. The command or control key shows how tight the spiral winds, so I can actually make it a much tighter spiral like this, and then I can use the plus key, the up arrow key to make more of those like that. And I can also, if I can do this right, with the command or control key, I can flip it. You can see I'm now on the inside of the spiral versus being on the outside of the spiral. And when you're on the inside and use the up and down arrow key, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this because we're pretty far zoomed in here, but it's going to start adding to the outside instead of the inside. All right. So you can make a pretty tight spiral if you want to. And then that's a very thick one there. I can also, let's take a stroke down a little bit so you can see it better. There we go. I could also just click like with the other tools, and what it brings up here is the radius. So from the center out, the rate of decay. That's how tightly the spiral winds. It's called the rate of decay. Segments, you can see each of the segments in here based off the anchor point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, usually kind of 4 in each loop. So there's 29 here total. And you can also change the direction of the spiral. So this is the direction we have right now. I'm going to click this one instead and say OK. And you can see instead of spiraling up, it spirals down. Okay. The last tool here are the grid tools, and I'm going to take a real sip of water here real quick. Okay. Next, we get the grid tools. The first one is the rectangular grid, and with this one, if I pull it out, it is a box with lines in it, and these are not joined lines, these are separate lines, but it is a box with lines in it, so a rectangle with lines in it. So again, I can hold down the shift key to make it perfect. The alt option key makes it pull out from center. And then the up and down arrow keys do a nice interesting little thing where they add the rows, and the left and right arrow keys add the columns. So you can have more or less of those in there. And again, I can make it perfect size. You'll see that perfect isn't a square anymore because how many rows versus columns I added. So perfect is now kind of a rectangular look. The square is on the outside, and there's rectangles on the insides. If I let go of this, you can see over here that it is a group, so it's not a permanent thing. If I wanted to put color inside of each of these, I couldn't do it because they're not actually joined together. If I go into the group, I can actually pull each of these little pieces off. The outside is one giant piece, so you do have a rectangle there, but the rest of them are not available. And the last one is the polar grid tool. And it does similar things here. We pull out with it. The shift makes it perfect. Alt option makes it go out from center. The up and down arrow keys give you more circles, and the left and right ones give you more of the lines that go out to the sides. If I click with just a one click, the polar grid tool options come up, and I forgot to do this for the one above again, but you can see here we have a height and width, concentric dividers, which are the circles, radial dividers out from center, 14 of those. You can skew them. You can create compound paths from the ellipses, and you can fill the grid, which I don't know if these things really work on the fill grid one, but you can see where it bent them. It put them all off to one side. It didn't actually keep them evenly spaced. If I go back to the rectangle and hit the rectangular grid tool options, you can see we have the number of horizontal dividers, skews on these, use outside rectangle as a frame. So I'm going to try skewing these really quickly, see what happens, say OK. And you can see that they skew off to one side. Again, it's not that they're bending, they're just moving over to one side of it. All right, so that is all for our open objects. And on our next video, we will move on to freehand drawing and possibly the shaper tool in that same video. We'll have to see how long that one runs. All right, so I will see you in the next video.